Workflow seems to be the buzzword that you hear everywhere. It's like marketed as that one thing that you need to know, and that if you do know, then your tracks are going to be like 10 times better off, 100 times better off. I'm just going to solve that for you in this video. We're just going to put it behind us, all right? The first thing you need to know, workflow, the word itself. Let's just start off by binning it. We don't need it. I don't like that word because it's not very descriptive and it just seems very like mystical. Process. This is a much better word. Why should you listen to some guy in a red jumper on YouTube? I've been coaching music producers for the last 5 years or so. I specialize in one-on-one coaching. 90% of what we're doing is simply just creating, tailoring, specifying, personalized workflows so that people are really clear on going from an idea all the way to a track ready for mastering and release. That's my job. So let's start by talking about what happens when you don't have a process. I need to find my pen here. Without a process, it's kind of like going on a road trip without a GPS. You know the general direction of where you're going, and you could probably get closer to that spot if you just drive, but you actually don't really know where you're turning. It'd probably be really hard to actually get to the exact spot unless you're pretty knowledgeable. You might get close, but when you have a process, you have that map and you can decide whether you want to take that route or you can take a different route. You can like not follow that process. You can do whatever you want. If you have it there, then it just guides you. It becomes a lot more relaxing. So without a process, you're going to get stuck but not really sure why all the time, because the process helps you to diagnose your problems because it gives you a very clear path to go. So when something goes wrong, you can be like, oh, I know what's happening here. Without a process, we also, a lot of the time, might feel overwhelmed because there's so many things that we need to do when we're making music. The music production is really complex. There's lots of things to think about. So you'll probably feel overwhelmed because there's so many things to keep track of. Without a process, it's very easy to lose motivation after about 80%, 70%, 60%. However long you've been working on your track, you get sick of it really easily. And you end up hating them because you're working on them for so long. And it's very easy to get stuck in the last like 10, 20% if you're just relying on willpower alone. You might make something you like, but you're going to get sick of it very quickly. You're unsure if a track is finished. It's really hard to know when a track is finished. But if you have a process, like I know exactly when my track is finished. I just know that because I get to the end of my process and it's done. That's it. That's all. That's all. Without a process, it feels like you're floating around. Yes, that feeling of floating around, I know it all too well. What I want to talk about now is what a good process will do as well. So in the top line of the description, I've attached a very in-depth, detailed 3-day course about what happens in my process, and it takes you through the whole thing. I would recommend signing up to that if you're unsure about this. That way you've got a guide of like how I do things, and then you can take that and tailor it for yourself. Very important, because a good process, what it does is you know exactly what stage you're in. And that is dictated by the different mindsets that we have in electronic music. When you're creating something, you think about things differently to when you're arranging. And when you're mixing something, you think about the music differently again. So a good process will break these things up so that you're enhancing the creativity. You're enhancing that. You know what to focus on right now. Like we mentioned, there's a lot of different things that you have to focus on throughout the period of going from idea to track. It just separates those things up so you know exactly what to do at each time. And this will make your sessions a lot more efficient and fun, really. A good process, you know the steps to finish your track. We know all of the individual things that have to go into it to get to the end result. And we can troubleshoot if you get stuck. So if you do get stuck, now you also have the tools to know how to get unstuck as well. And getting stuck is much less frequent. It reduces the probability of this because getting stuck itself is something that the process is addressing directly. It's repeatable. So when you do it over and over, what happens is it starts to build the evidence and build your confidence as well. All this stuff combines together to create something that in the long run builds confidence and reduces self-doubt. Awesome. So what does my process look like? So I've been tweaking the way that I do things a lot over the last couple years, and I'll talk to you about some of the things that have changed and clarified recently. My process has a name. It's called CAM, C-A-M, and that's for the three main stages. The C stands for creative. This is the creative phase, and this is the phase when I can just simply worry about just experimenting, just picking a technique. Usually I'm like, oh, I want to, experiment with this one device. And then I just providing a real blank canvas for me to simply experiment and be really destructive. Then I can start to come back and shape those things up a little bit later. But for this reason, I'm making sure that I'm staying only in the loop. And this is important for a few different reasons. I don't want to go into and start my arrangement too quickly because I want to make sure that I know the boundaries of what happens here, and then what happens here, and then what happens here, and then what happens here. So I know what the end of the creative phase looks like. So I know what the start of the arrangement looks like, and so on. So at the end of my creative phase, what I'll go and I'll validate my loop. I'll make sure that I'm ready to start arranging. So we've got the validation. In this validation process, I'm making sure that I have everything ready for the arrangement. What's going to happen in the second half of the arrangement? Where am I going to go? What story am I going to tell? Do I have all of the things there? When you start arranging, your music kind of gets set into stone. It's really easy in the creative phase to just unmute and mute things. I can create different sections of my arrangement just by muting things and seeing what happens, seeing how they interact together. So I'm mentally arranging in my head before I actually go into my arrangement so that when I go into my arrangement, it's really quick. And now I'm just thinking about arrangement movements. I'm thinking about horizontally what is happening over time. I also am very clear about what happens at the end of my arrangement, and I know what happens at the start of my mixdown because I do a big mixdown setup. I set up my project differently so it's ready to be mixed so that I've optimized for the mixdown. It also helps me to shift that mind state as well. We're thinking about music differently when we're mixing it. So this is a very basic overview of what happens in my process. We all think differently, so we all need our own process, but it's not worth your time making this from scratch. So like I said, just you take my process. It's there. It's in the description. You can do that. And then go through and iteratively tweak that to fit yourself. We all work and think differently, so we need our own way of doing things. That is very important. And once we do that, things just become a lot easier. See you next time.